Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from New Delhi. My name is Aseem Chabra. Welcome on behalf of iView World Human Rights International Film Festival. I'm a programming consultant for the festival. I also program a number of other festivals. We have today a fascinating panel. I will first of all tell you what the panel is about. It's called Centering the Margins, On-Screen Narratives, Privileging the Dynamics of Exclusion. And we'll be discussing a number of films, a few films that are showing at our festival this time. Some are streaming, one is showing in a theater. And then we'll also talk about a film that we showed a few years ago at the IBU Festival. First of all, in my introduction, I want to introduce you to Maina Mukherjee, who will be actually moderating the panel. Hi, Maina. Maina is the creative director, and she's got many other titles of Engendered. Engendered is an arts organization that sort of runs iView Film Festival in addition to a lot of the other arts that it looks at from the lens of gender, sexuality, caste, race, religion. So Maina, welcome and look forward to the conversation. Next to Maina is Vinod Kamble. Vinodji, namaskar.
नमस्कार.
Vinod Kamble
Hi,
is
sir. Hi.
kya haal hai? Vinod Kamble is the director of a film called Kasturi, which is a very, very powerful film that we are showing at the festival. So Vinod ji, बहुत-बहुत शुक्रिया join करने का. आप कहाँ पे हैं भाई विनोद जी? सतारा में कहाँ पे हैं?
Yes, sir. So Solapur में, G2 place.
सोलापुर में. अच्छा हाँ. So Vinod ji सोलापुर में है. अच्छा, so that's good to see you. Next to Vinod, it's just in the order the people have sort of appeared on my screen, really, is Tillotama Shome. Tilly, can we see you? Hi. Your audio is off, so but
sorry.
Tillotama is joining us from Calcutta, right? Yeah. Tillotama is the lead in a beautiful film called Sir, which we are showing is one of the two films, which one of the couple of films that we're showing in a theater. Really glad to have Tilly here. Unfortunately, she won't be able to join us for the festival, but we're really honored. It's a stunning performance, and of course, everything she does is stunning. So thank you, Tilly. Next to Tilly is Tillotama is Rohena Gera. Rohena is the director of Sir. Rohena, can we see you? Hi, Rohena.
Hi, hello. Thank you for having me and having our film.
Welcome. And Rohena, you are joining us from Paris, right?
Yes.
Wow. We only do all this big international kind of panels. So every major city in the world is covered. So Rohena, thank you. Thank you for the film and thank you for joining us. Next to Rohena is Onir. Onir, hi. Onir is a veteran filmmaker, groundbreaking films that I'm sure you've seen. My brother Nikhil and so many more. I am. Today we'll be talking specifically about a film that Onir and his co-producer Sanjay Suri had produced called Chauranga, but I'm sure Maina will touch upon other works of Onir also. And there's one more person who's supposed to join, but I messaged him. He probably will join us, Arun Karthick, who's directed Nasir, which we're also showing at the festival. So over to you, Maina. I will mute myself and I'll listen in. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Onir. Thank you so much, Aseem, and thank you everyone for joining us and lending your time to this. This is a panel that's very, very close to my heart. I've been a big admirer, and iView World is really about independent cinema and privileging voices that would otherwise, and over the years, have been invisibilized. We look to represent agency and narrative at the intersections of the politics of representation. So this is something that is really what we are most committed to. And all of you have made such excellent, beautiful films about, that are really moving, but also have an incredible amount of impact in the way the world perceives, these protagonists, and also how all of us are transformed by it and the kind of impact that it has. Having said that, independent cinema is difficult to sustain. And one of the things that I want to talk about today is also the economics of privileging some of these marginalities on screen. Whether what is how would you look at the cost benefit of that, when you could have, for all of you, you've made choices. You could have made commercial cinema. And what is this idea of commercial cinema? How do you understand that? Because there's a lot of films now that are really crossing over and are literally centering the margins as they speak. Onir, you've had some very mainstream sort of blockbuster films, along with I Am My Brother Nikhil. And it was a surprise hit. And since then, actually, you have, the more you've grown as a director, you found that things have been, challenging as time has gone by. So kind of looking also at arcs and journeys. Same for you, Tilly. You've made some astonishing choices in your roles over the years, and we want to listen to a little bit. And you've embodied these marginalities or people on the margins and their stories. So we want to hear about why you have made those choices. And from Rohena and from Vinod, I'd really like to hear about why you felt the story was important to tell. Like, why did you choose this particular story to tell and what it meant? So the conversation, this is much more of a conversation. We want to hear anecdotes from all of you for over the years. So I'll start with maybe Sir, because it's one of our first films.
Moina, Arun is here. Arun has joined us.
Hi,
Yes, I'm very
hello,
excited.
everyone.
Okay.
I'm so
Sorry
excited
to be a
to.
little late.
I'm so happy to see you in person, Arun. It's really so
Hi, Tillotama. Yes, happy to see you
wonderful.
too.
I've heard so much about you from Shomo, and I'm so delighted to see your face in person.
Nice to meet you. Yes.
Arun, thank you
Sorry,
very
guys,
much for joining. Seriously,
join the session.
No, the perfect timing. We had just finished the introduction, and Maina was going to start the moderation. And so Arun is the director of Nasir, which is also showing at the festival. And we're honored, really. So thank you for joining us, Arun. Take on, yeah, Maina.
And Arun, thank you for joining us. And what a beautiful and powerful film it is. It's, we are really thrilled to have it with us. I was just talking about what the panel is, and I was just saying that, we want this to be much more of a conversation. All of you have made choices in cinema that are different, from mainstream cinema, or kind of the narratives that you would see in mainstream cinema. So we're going to talk a little bit about those choices, and we'll come to you. But I wanted to hear maybe from Rohena and Tillotama initially about why, Rohena, you felt, what drew you to this story, and why did you feel compelled to explore this in cinema?
Sure. Do
Can
you
I
want to?
just request Vinod ji, आप अपना audio थोड़ा सा mute कर सकते हैं? I think there's a lot of sound that's coming in while Rohena and this one are talking. Great, thank you.
I think, Maina, the questions you're asking are really interesting to me, also in terms of how you get things made and why, and also how things break down. So I wanted to talk about two aspects of it. One is really why this film, and I mean, I've often said why, because I grew up like so many of us with help at home, and I felt that there's something wrong with how we live. But as a child, you really don't know how to process that, or what to do with it, or how to bridge those gaps, or how to even make sense of the fact that you love this other person who gives you so much love, but that she can't eat at the table with you. Like, I didn't know what to do with that reality, but the what I wanted to address is the how of it. Like, I decided to do it as a love story because I felt that was a way to approach the subject matter, to talk about this class divide, and the sort of segregation that we live with, without trying to be like, I don't have the answer, right? So I didn't want to try. I didn't know what to say about it because I'm part of the problem. So I thought that a love story would be a way to talk about it, to make the two more equal, but also a way to make it accessible, and therefore to try to break out of this box that that people like to put you in, that, oh, you're going to be art house, which to them means boring or preachy, and to try to break out from that space and be like, look, this is just a love story,
Right,
and then you can talk about other things within that. So for me, I think it was also, I love love stories, but so I'm not talking down to the genre at all, but I just feel that it was a way for me to address something that I'd carried around like a sort of guilty secret my whole life, that I'm part of this. I'm part of this society, and I do live like this, and I'm part of the problem. It was a way to address it, to work through it, to figure it out also, and to also try to make it somehow less on the margins as a film, and rejected for its art house, whatever they call it, independent, whatever, those words which I spent a lot of time apologizing that no, really, it's not an art house film. It went to Cannes, but it's really not. I had to do a lot of that.
It's almost like there's such a
not
hierarchy.
a festival film,
Because of course you've spent, it's a labor of love. You've told this story with so much time and craft and rigor, and you want the story to get out to as many people as possible. An audience is much required, and there is a hierarchy, and there is a assumption that is made of certain kind of films that you didn't want the film to be boxed in. But I think that it's fantastic that you acknowledge that we all have a sense of unease when it comes to, especially people, all of us who are progressive, and we don't acknowledge the kind of privilege and the kind of stratification that in society that we live in. It's something that any of us who's lived abroad also finds it very difficult to adjust to when you come back. It's sharp, but the other thing that is very problematic and very sad is that over time, I remember coming back. I lived in New York for 20 years, and I remember coming back, and this was something that I would find, it would hurt my senses and was very jarring to my senses. But over time, I mean, it is so embedded in society around us that there is a certain level of desensitization that occurs, and that complacency also is so problematic. So a film like yours is so welcome because it reminds us of everything that is wrong that we live with, and we just say that we can't really fight the structures that are. So it's very important to have that narrative. And Tillotama, you have always privileged. I mean, this is not the first film. I mean, I remember in Monsoon Wedding, everyone loved your character, and you brought so much humanity to that character. So Tilly, tell us about your choices in films and what drew you to some of these roles.
First, it's really strange.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's really strange that I'm amidst a panel of all directors, so I feel a bit of an imposter right now. So I'm trying to look all official with posters of films and all behind, but really I feel like I've gate crashed into a wrong party right now. But thank you for having me with such wonderful storytellers. What makes me choose, I don't know, I think it's really the screenplay and the humanity of the director that draws one in. And when I often ask for the screenplay because I'm socially not that cool. So I like reading the script and by myself. And then, of course, speak with the heart, behind that script. And and I've seen that I'm often drawn not by any kind of practicalities, but really primarily by the humanity of the director and their conviction in their script, and and I am drawn to a script which makes me discover a blind spot, because I have so many, and the joy of working in the films that I've done has really come from knowing more about myself, and a script, when it reveals your own prejudices, because I think we're talking about hierarchy and we're talking about privilege. I think the most beautiful truth and sad at the same time is that the biases of the privileged and the progressive actually thrive in the petri dish of ignorance, very well-intentioned ignorance. We all like to think we are progressive and nice people, but when I read Rohena's script, for instance, it made me feel that many things, but one of the things about living in such a class-driven society is the language of desire. That we are so deeply entrenched in our class politics and our class biases that we don't acknowledge the desire of people who are from a class different from us, and we can't even think of an interclass exploration of desire. That the only forum in which a love story between somebody, a man of the house and the lady who works for him, is relegated to pornography in our country. We can't even imagine it in our fiction, let alone our reality. So when I actually read Rohena's film, I felt deeply uncomfortable, so that's what made me say yes. And I think that's been the instinct for Qissa, for Monsoon Wedding, for films that have really changed me, or pushed something, So yeah.
What was, I'm going to come back to Qissa in a little while and talk about that role, because it was so striking as well. But I wanted to talk to Vinod ji, because Vinod's film is about something that is, I mean, when you talk about class politics, that's still something that mainstream cinema and independent cinema have both seen. But when it comes to caste, there's an even more of an invisibilization that has happened. I mean, I think you could count the number of films that have, on one hand, since over the past 2 decades, that have dealt with issues of caste, and especially in Hindi cinema. Regional cinema is still seen, some instances, and I think class we still acknowledge, but caste is something that we like to just pretend like it doesn't exist, because it's so shocking. So Vinodji, tell us, why did you tell us a little bit about Kasturi, and why you also chose a child protagonist for the film.
मैं हिंदी में बोलूँगा, कंफर्टेबल विद हिंदी। यस, कस्तूरी करने के पीछे मेरा मोटिव था कि बचपन से मैंने जो काम है स्वीपर का काम मैंने घर में देखा है। मेरे पिताजी एज ए स्वीपर है म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन में, मेरी दादी काम करती थी, सो मैं दादी के साथ काम पे जाता था, तो मैंने वो महसूस किया है लोगों की नजर, जो लोग बिहेव करते हैं आपके साथ जब आप काम करते हैं, या आपके उनके पास आप चाय पीने जाते हैं या पानी मांगते हैं। सो आई एम पर्सनली फील इट, एक्सपीरियंस इट। तो मुझे लगा कि अगर मैं कुछ बनाऊंगा मेरे लाइफ में, या सिनेमा या किताब हो, तो मैं शायद इस पे ही कुछ लिखूंगा या बनाऊंगा। इसलिए मैंने वो जो मेरी जर्नी थी, जो मैंने महसूस किया था और मैंने देखा था मेरे आसपास जो होता था, और उसके बाद एक बच्चा है हमारे सिटी में जो अभी भी पोस्टमार्टम करता है, तो उसकी ये कहानी है पोस्टमार्टम, जो 8वीं कक्षा से वो पोस्टमार्टम कर रहा है, अभी भी पोस्टमार्टम करता है यहाँ पे वो। तो उसकी कहानी जब मैंने न्यूज़पेपर में पढ़ी, लोकल न्यूज़पेपर पे, मुझे लगा कि इस बच्चे में मेरी कहानी है। इसमें मेरी कहानी दिख रही थी मुझे, तो मुझे लगा कि अगर मैं इसकी कहानी बताऊंगा शायद मेरा दर्द कम हो जाएगा, मैं उसको महसूस कर पाऊंगा, उसको दिखा पाऊंगा, आई एम फील इट सेम फॉर हिम। तो मुझे लगा कि अगर इसकी कहानी मैं आगे लेके आऊंगा तो शायद जो मुझे अनकंफर्टेबल फील होता है लोग देखेंगे, शायद तो उनको भी ये देख के अनकंफर्टेबल फील होगा कि हम इन लोगों के साथ कैसे बिहेव करते हैं, जो आपने जो टॉयलेट करके जो शिट छोड़ दिया है उसके साथ क्या होता है, वो कौन लोग साफ करते हैं, उनकी पर्सनल स्टोरी क्या है, उनके लाइफ में क्या होता है। तो इसके जो अनकंफर्टेबल जो मुझे हुआ था उस वजह से मैंने ये स्क्रिप्ट चूज की और बनाने की मैंने कोशिश की है। मैं जब मैं कहता हूँ कि मुझे पता नहीं कितना मैं सक्सेस हुआ उसमें, लेकिन मैंने कोशिश की है कि जो भी मेरे आसपास होता है, जो मेरे पास हो, मेरे साथ हुआ है, वो मैं उसको पोर्ट्रेट कर पाऊँ एज ए प्रोटेगनिस्ट। बच्चा लेने की ये कोशिश थी कि जब हम बच्चे होते हैं तो हमके बहुत सारे डिजायर होते हैं पाने की, अगर कोई चीज हो या कोई हो। तो कस्तूरी एलिमेंट लेने के पीछे ये था कि कस्तूरी ये तो एक काल्पनिक एलिमेंट है, उसको हासिल करना एक अलग ही लेवल का पागलपन चाहिए या होता है। तो कस्तूरी इज ए स्टोरी अबाउट फाइंड योर सेल्फ, खुद को खोजने की या ढूंढने की कोशिश मीन्स कस्तूरी है मेरे लिए। तो वो बच्चा कोई बच्चा हो, किसी भी कास्ट क्लास का हो, वो उसमें आपको देख सकता है, खुद को खोज सकता है या खुद को तरस सकता है। तो इसीलिए मैंने ये कस्तूरी का सब्जेक्ट चुना और मैं इस प्रोड्यूसर को मैं थैंक्स बोलूंगा मेरे कि उन्होंने मुझे सपोर्ट किया, क्योंकि ऐसे सब्जेक्ट को इस वक्त प्रोड्यूस करना या लोगों के सामने ले जाना ये बहुत ही अलग चैलेंज था। स्क्रिप्ट लिखना अलग चैलेंज है, उसकी मेकिंग प्रोसेस वो बहुत अलग चैलेंज है। सो मेरे पास उसने सोशल अवेयरनेस होने वाले प्रोड्यूसर है, इसलिए मुझे लगा कि ये फिल्म लोगों के सामने आई है और लोग देख रहे हैं, उसको अप्रिशिएट कर रहे हैं। सो मुझे बहुत खुशी है इस फिल्म के सक्सेस के बारे में।
कितना टाइम लगा आपको ये पिक्चर बनाने में? आई मीन
मुझे लगता है कि कंसेप्ट से लेके पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन के मुझे 4 साल गए मेरे पर्सनल लाइफ के, इसमें इन्वॉल्व होते और बनते।
आई सी, वंडरफुल। तो हम वापस आएंगे इसके ऊपर। Arun, I wanted to go to you next and sort of talk about this other, your film really. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mayana.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So, wanted to talk about this. Your film has this narrative about, this new phenomenon of feeling as a community, feeling of unbelonging, within a larger community. And it's really shocking. So tell us a little bit about, is this your first film or have you made something before, and why did you choose this story to tell?
Hi, hello everyone. So my choices in cinema primarily stems from a certain sense of belonging that I would, So this belonging, what I mean is, for instance, I've made 2 films. This is Nasir is my second feature. My first feature was called Shiva Puranam, and on both the films, my approach or my interest in wanting to dwell on that narrative has been in a way that there has to be some kind of a lived-in understanding of the place. So how do I get a lived-in understanding of a place? Which means then why don't I look at stories around me? So I come from a village in Coimbatore. So it's about 20 kilometers away from the city. So I was born and raised in the village, and the city is where the story of Nasir takes place. And when I read the short story, I almost fell in love with the character that the short story writer had created, and more so also the places that this character inhabits, because that is the place that we used to go to school, and that's where we all go to get our clothes, and as families when we go out. My school was in the middle of the city, so every time from the village. So when I read the short story, I understood that okay, these are spaces that I kind of know, and this here is a character with whom I kind of relate, even though like I liked what Tillotama was mentioning about, like finding gestures or finding something in people from other class or whatever, like even though there might be things that are in different positions as you, but then there are things that unify you. For example, I mean, I saw myself in the character in the sense that we are all from very working class backgrounds, and with living together with different kinds of communities, and always in friction with all of that. And so and also recognizable spaces, and in this space all the narrative events turning out, and all of this was is a sense of belonging that I think, okay, here is a world that I would like to show, or here is a world that probably I would like to inquire more upon. And then you start from there and start making all a rest of a whole series of choices, then from however you want to go with the narrative. But primarily, yeah, they come from wanting to actually belong more. So how do you tell a story about unbelonging? If your question is that, I don't know how Nasir is a story about unbelonging, because it's very much a story about belonging, because Nasir as a character belongs to the place. Okay, he is made probably not to belong by a certain external force about which he never cared in the first place. So what I liked about this particular character when I read the short story was, here is a person who, even though there might be a lot of political upheaval around him and all that, he resorts to his inner world, particularly his family, his work, and with his small pleasures in his everyday life and all of that. And he is not a person who would like to uh, be politically charged and to go out and like really fight it out, whatever the problem was. So this particular characterization of a Muslim interested me. And more than giving an agency to this character, I saw as actually be this as an opportunity to be able to represent a man with let's say with kind of a very I don't know if ordinary or simple would be the right word to use, but with a kind of very happy-go-lucky kind of an attitude to life. So the very aspect that here is a Muslim character who does not talk about politics, or who is not like politically disturbed by things around him. I mean, of course he might be, but he chooses not to uh, like go in that particular I mean dimension of wanting to politically find work things out for himself in life or anything. So here is a person who's more invested in his immediate family and his immediate job and everything. And of course he is around, chooses to delve into, let's say, an ordinary poem or a 60s Hindi song and all of that. So the characterization of a person with such an inner life kind of drew me in. And also knowing all these spaces, and actually from being a kid visiting all these places, when studying in the same schools that the actual story also actually happened, and all of that brought me into a kind of an understanding. Okay, this is a world that I would probably be able to lend my my whole inquisitiveness to language, because always when you're talking about margins, when you're talking about centralization, when you're talking about point of views, it all comes down to what is the language that you're going to kind of uh, uh, deal with or engage, because beyond your intentions, beyond your interests on representing the subject in cinema, it all comes down to the shot, or when I say a shot, I mean sound, light, everything, like how do you actually talk about what you want to talk about, and so it becomes a very interesting way for you to actually discover your own world, which you thought you belonged all the while. Now here is a character which challenges your understanding of your particular world. So for me, it always starts, the choices start from this sense of belonging. Do I belong in this space, or does this emotion belong in me? Then I feel as a writer and director, if it belongs in me, definitely, because the character I see is also a part of me, which is why I'm making the choice in the first place. I'm choosing to make a film about Nasir, because I think I am an extension of him, or there is a part of me in him, so this recognition should happen, and it has happened to me with two films. And even the film that I'm working on now, it's near my village, it's in the mountains. I've been living here now, just like I did for Nasir. Even though it's just 20 kilometers away from my home, the location, I took 2.5 years to live in that Muslim neighborhood, to just to belong more, like. So this sense of belonging is very important for me as a filmmaker, to even write about something, to think about something, to be even want to say, to make a comment, or to actually, for me to freeze the two-dimensional image from this three-dimensional world, I need choices which make me believe that it is a part of my world. And what is your world is the whole inquiry, that is the inquiry that is kind of brought out by this engagement with the story. Like, the story allows you to inquire, or for you to juxtapose your thoughts with thought of the character, both belonging to one space which you think you also belong. So so it's it's so it's it's um maybe when you talk also about belonging, it possibly could also make a statement about unbelonging. But Nasir is very much a story about a person who absolutely wants to belong to everything that he's part of, and somehow, so for certain forces which are beyond him does not make him do that. So that is pretty much it on why I wanted to do this film, I guess.
Sorry, there's actually a drum playing outside. It's Shadi season in Delhi, so I didn't want the noise to come in and infiltrate. But I was listening to you very carefully. No, I understand. I think you're absolutely right in what you said. When you make a film about belonging, it makes a statement about the unbelonging from the other side. So Nasir is definitely a voice from who's so familiar to all of us, because there's so many of my extended family or friends who, um, you know, they're kind of inured. They live in these little bubbles and these worlds. And if you talk to them about everything that's happening around, they don't necessarily think of themselves as political agents. But the truth of the matter is the politics around you, hierarchies in the environment around you, uh, have a political effect on everything around. I mean, whether Nasir was, of course, he was not. I mean, he was living a life that required him to concentrate on the daily, everyday of life, just sustaining himself in the everyday, which is such a enormous part of lives through most of India, right? And yet, the changing political climate around, the kind of exclusion, the kind of Islamophobia that has been growing, that obviously has an effect on someone's life, whether or not they choose to politically engage with it or not, or see. So they are definitely part of the politics, irrespective of whether. And I think that your film made a really startling sort of it's a startling commentary on just that. So it was really fantastic, because the other side of it is also true. um, I think even people who are complacent on the other side, and who are from privileged sort of, uh, who are more central in the imaginations of society, they very easily sort of shirk all responsibility, and kind of, and of course, people who consider themselves progressive feel a certain sense of unease. But then there's, um, eventually, like Tilly and Rohena said, we become part of the problems ourselves. So an acknowledgement of that as filmmakers or content creators is really, it's really heartening and good to see, because that's really what we need more and more. um, Onir, I'm going to come to you. Onir has been at our festival many times, and he's a dear friend. And I feel like this is like the 100th panel that I'm doing with him. But you have also chosen to make difficult stories. And a couple of years back, I mean, your work has dealt a lot with gender and sexuality, and sort of the marginalized intersections of gender and sexuality. But a few years back, you made this film called Chauranga, and you produced it. And tell us a little bit about why you chose that film to produce, and what your journey was like, both before and after. And
Actually, me and the director, writer, Vikas Mishra, we were both at a script lab in Locarno. And when we were returning back to Bombay after the script lab, he told me that at the airport, he says, "Do you mind reading the script and see what are the possibilities?" And when I read the script, what really fascinated me is that I knew this world existed, but I had not really encountered it the way the film, in the script Vikas did. And also, I realized that this was a film that I could have never made myself, because Vikas belongs to the space, and the way, each of the characters, the way everything, the nuances he saw it, for me, it was learning, it was understanding. I mean, it's not that, I didn't know anything about it, but it was a different journey that I felt while reading the script. And it made me, I remember telling Vikas that I don't know how, but I want to try and produce this film after I read that film. And it was a difficult process to get the finance for the film for various reasons. One is like what Maida you mentioned, and now when I was listening to be it Vinod's journey or Rohena's journey with Sir, the whole process of you when you make the film, releasing the film, making first is a big challenge because one, however much you think, as a filmmaker, because by now you're aware of how what is mainstream, what is not mainstream, and like Rohena was mentioning, you try and figure out that okay, how can I not make it in a way where it is perceived as art house. So as producer, also you're trying to juggle with various things, be it casting, positioning, how you can reach out to, and actually through the years and also through making Chauranga, I've realized that I I will no longer try that. That's a useless endeavor because you are what you are, and to try and hide that identity and take up another identity, it never works because however much you do, actually, though today like people keep talking about now you have platforms now, but actually the more or less there are exceptions, but the game is the same. you know, Till recently, COVID time, certain changes, but before that, uh, how a platform reacts to your film depends on the cast. Okay, depends on your box office performance. So, when initially there was this talk by everyone that, oh, now you don't have to worry about box office performance. You've been to so many festivals, and platform is the way to go. And there are people who don't even understand any. I have people constantly telling me, release it on YouTube. I mean, how am I going to, recover the expenses? You just release it on YouTube. Similarly, platforms also are chasing eyeballs. Today, it's a myth when, I recently I was having an argument on Twitter with one of our colleagues. I feel that we sometimes overdo this celebration that, oh my God, with these platforms coming in, it is the director's medium. I'm sorry, they want to refuse the fact that right from the script, right from the amount of you are earlier there were, I think in a way I sometimes feel it was easier because you were negotiating one producer, okay, and trying to figure out what is mainstream, but now you're trying to figure out with platforms what their goal of eyeballs, their goal of what is the kind of audience they're trying to address, and when you are doing stories which is like, suppose you are like Chauranga was about the characters were Dalits in the film, and they don't feature because they're not viewers. And today it is cool to want to know what about the B towns, but it's not cool to know about the Dalits. So they're not there in the audience space so much. So it's a constant struggle that no one wants to listen to these stories. And if they want to listen, if it has to be light and fun, not so serious. And then in platform, because viewership does not have a certain, uh, concentration for long, then you have to make, every 15 minutes, 20 minutes, there needs to be some twist. So there are lots of you are just your customer is a different so now suddenly you are designing for platforms what is binge worthy kind of a thing. So I feel that is not really what originally we thought, that it was a space for independent cinema. So that whole concept of independence becomes a myth. And for me, like after making Chauranga, making it was difficult. Like it was funding through various sources, partly crowdfunded, partly by NFDC, and then the nightmare of distribution. Despite being chosen as it won the India Gate Gold Award at Mami, a best film at IFLA, and many other festivals it went to, but there was just nobody willing to release the film. you know. So you end up, I mean, finally we kind of arranged for private financing. And I tell people that okay, might have got 2 national awards. Chauranga has got so many awards, but till today, right from my brother Nikhil to I am to Chauranga, I'm struggling to recover the monies. you know and it is, and what is difficult is that you have people, you always said, oh, there were so many people who trusted you, you know when I was crowdfunding or for whichever. And then you always think that, oh, maybe things are better now because you hear this euphoria about, but you realize, no, that, I mean, I won't say it does not, it's like overall close, but it is only for a handful of people that it works. We are the largest filmmaking, country in the world. And if you see, I remember seeing Sir 2 years back, I think, in Melbourne, and I was stunned. It is one of the most beautiful films that I've seen in recent years, and it just broke my heart that it takes it so long to come to the audience, and then also you know, I know, I mean, why is it that, the only criteria becomes how many people, you know, I feel that, okay, overnight you will not, because we need to create this audience, be it for queer cinema, be it for, content like this, but to expect, be it for the platforms or whatever, that overnight there will be a, huge audience for like this is, and at the same time, we are not idiots when we make these kind of independent films. They are made within a very contained budget, so neither that our expectations are, the same as some big commercial film, but the way the platforms squeeze us, when the negotiations happen, because they know these guys don't have an option, you know. And I feel that that is something that, I mean, I feel we are still quite far to figuring out in India, and especially now with NFDC also not actively producing films as much. It's not so easy, to get. Uh, it's sad that why suppose for my next film I'm looking at Canadian Film Fund. Why do I have to do it? Why not in this country, which is the largest film producing country in the world?
That's very true. I've known this well now by knowing you for all of these years. I wanted to ask Rohena and Tillotama and Vinod and Arun, have you felt constrained because of the choices that you've made cinematically? Has that have you felt that that has pigeonholed you perhaps into a particular kind of filmmaking, or has it, tell us a little bit about the challenges that you faced while sort of um, while making these choices or telling these stories. Rohena, would you like to?
First of all, I just want to say to Onir, like it's really nice to hear you speak, because you've been there, done that, and to see you hanging in there, and I've admired you since the first film. I think my brother Nikhil was the first, and I was like, wow, this exists. Like, how did he do this? So despite the challenges, to see you there and going strong, it's amazing. It helps. Um, I don't. As far as the challenges here, it's the typical. Uh, you know, you need I mean, even during the making, I was advised to try to get better known, or let's say more bankable was the word used, actors, and things like that. And then even though the film was getting celebrated outside India, I was apologizing in India for my choices, for the fact that it it wasn't a big star that they could get behind. So I think that's, but I mean, and I appreciate what Oni said also. You are who you are, and your film is what it is, and you just have to yeah, and you know, and you do we are in this sort of very brutal marketplace, and I think India is particularly brutal in that sense, because there is no there aren't support systems, right? Like for my French co-producer, they don't have to worry about making the money back. Like if he has CNC funding for something, he doesn't have to pay that back, you know. So then they can go out there and do what they want, and you know, get respect for a film that is quote unquote art house, and you know, so I think yeah, I guess those challenges are still there, you know, very much so. The star system, so to speak.
Well, that's such a shame, because we think that Tilly is the biggest star there is.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Yeah. Tilly, tell us about, you know, how you know, you've been so appreciated, you know, critically acclaimed in starting from your first sort of debut in on my Monsoon Wedding. How have you felt like you were excluded from a particular type of role, or did you feel that you kind of you know, chose differently, or you know, people try to pigeonhole you into something, and after all these years of such excellent films, you know, what does the word bankable mean? Like I'm you know, how does that
I'm sorry. I'm also sorry. I'm also sorry to have said that. But you,
no,
I mean,
no, you were honest. I mean, this is,
like,
if you can't be honest in a conversation like that, then what's the point, right? I mean, of course, we understand. We see it. We talk to filmmakers all the time, and you know, these are compelling stories, and these are stories that have, when people actually, audiences come to see it, they are transformed. So it's not that it's not difficult to find audiences. I think that with distributors and with producers, it's also a question of you know, faith, and knowing that if it, that there is an audience for it, but having the faith to make the stories and keeping them in the theaters. But if the system is already stacked against, there's a certain kind of prejudice that already exists, then these films don't get a chance. You know, that's the way that I think, and I would have hoped that the OTT platform thing changes that a little bit, but it's also illuminating to hear from Onir that unfortunately maybe that's not quite true yet. So, but Tilly, I didn't want to, I mean, I saw you starting to talk, and then.
Listen, I mean, you'd asked the question, I think, about what are the challenges. My challenge is only to deliver my director's vision. Okay, a director who has trusted me with their script. It's like someone has given you their child, and given that I'm not a mother, it's like, oh my God, you're giving me your child. Are you sure? Like, really? Are you sure? Because there may be other people who will be better caregivers, you know. So for me, it's really, it's such a huge, the challenge is to respond to my director's vision with as much honesty, as much, you know, as much of myself that I can put in, because I do feel like, you know, this whole notion of are you bankable or not, I want to keep the maths of this outside, because I have never factored that in when I've chosen a project. I would really like my producer to make their money back. I would really like that. But it's not in my hands. But what is in my hands is how much of myself I can bring into a script and how I can deliver the director's vision. So, you know, that's really been the biggest challenge. And I feel like this problem of you know, certain kinds of films not making, finding space, certain narratives not finding space, the way we frame our women, the way we frame our men in the stories, these are age-old issues. There'll always be these challenges, and it's the beauty of being in the margin, is that you don't have to subscribe to the rules of the mainstream, you know. So there's great freedom also. I mean,
Yes,
as an actor,
absolutely.
I've spent my initial years feeling isolated, feeling lonely, that, you know, my films release in outside India. There's no camaraderie that I have, you know, with the industry and the country where I live. And I've questioned my self-worth. I felt lonely. But as one grows older, and I guess it develops a sense of humor about it, you are like, but also there's so much freedom.
That's so true. That's so true.
And your identity.
Once you're past that binary of, like, you know, being a heroine versus like you know, these tropes that exist in cinema, in mainstream cinema. Once you're past that, you're right. I mean, there is so much agency and freedom in being able to choose, um, you know, stories that just appeal to you on aesthetic levels and other levels as well. I completely agree. And it's really good to hear you say that, Tilly, because I know that your journey is also probably the journey of many other women who are trying to break this sort of the mold of representation, and the straitjacket of roles that are offered to them. So, you know, hearing you say that, you know, this was sort of in your initial years, this was something that you thought of and you interacted with, but then over time you've overcome that and you've realized how much freedom there is really empowering for other people to hear as well.
Yeah, because I think the problem is really when, you know, you start seeing yourself through the eyes of others.
Yes,
you know? That's
yes.
when things get murky.
Right, right, absolutely.
But I've been very spoiled. I've met such wonderful filmmakers, and I've been offered parts that I knew that, you know, the worth and the merit and the connection with the audience was not, I would never reduce it to a box office number or how many theaters it released in. And I know Onir said, you know, it took 2 years for Sir to release theatrically. I'm used to far longer. 2 years, that's nothing. That's like, wow, my film released in 2 years. That's, you know, I think there's a certain kind of patience that you know, develop. I mean, in the last 20 years, with your relationship with time. And I think things take time. I like it when things take time. I'm very afraid when things happen very fast, actually. It makes me very nervous. So if I get a film and the director tells me we have 2 years to prepare for it, I'm very, very relieved. You know, okay, I have 1 year to learn the language, 1 year to maybe learn about the place. So I think time for me is a very good friend. And I think it makes you, you know, hardy. You know, as opposed to a plant with very shallow roots. I think it allows you to have deeper roots so that you can hold on to this. I want to act till I die. So I'm not in a rush to make it, and I'm not in a rush to prove anything to anybody, you know. And I think that is, you know, that is just, it's comforting. It's comforting to know that the stories that are being written now by certain filmmakers, that there is a certain synergy that's happening. Certain kind of storytellers are collaborating with certain kinds of actors. It's like, you know, pieces of mercury that are just coming together. It's like a matrix is forming, you know, and that takes time.
Yes.
You know, I feel the kind of collaboration that's happening across with technicians, with writers, sound designers, supporting each other. I think the notion of the margin itself, people who are working and have the freedom of working in the margins are also creating cross connections and becoming support structure for each other and propping each other up. You know, like, take the crew from my film, I will help you with equipment, you know, my guy will do the sound. I think what's happening, at least my experience of the kind of filmmakers, you know, I'm in conversation with, or the stories they're telling, it's always been tough. And when you hear somebody like Jia Zhangke, who has won so many international awards, I remember sitting on his talk and him saying that, you know, change takes a long time. Changing anything takes a long time. So patience is I think is a virtue. It's not a virtue, it's a requirement to you know, do what you love to do. And of course it'll be tough sometimes, but I mean. क्या
No,
करें, मजा भी तो आ रहा है ना.
हाँ, and और बढ़ रहा है. I mean, it's a repository that's growing. It's an archive that's in the making. You know, I was talking to Shabana ji on another panel for iView, and you know, there was reminiscence about, you know, all those years when she was taking and making films that were different, you know, and choosing not to be, because she did have opportunity to make different choices, but she didn't. And you know, both, there's no sort of what's the word, there's no judgment about what kind of choices some other artists make, and some actors make. Some actors choose to make stories that are more that have more mass appeal or whatever, you know, of the times. But eventually, I mean, there is, like you said, things take time, and while things are taking time, there is a shift that is happening. Like, there's a shift of centers that are shifting towards the margins, and all of your representations are definitely building this body of change, you know, as time is passing. I wanted to ask, you know, Arun, if is he still there? Oh yes. Arun's background has changed fantastically, and I can see like blue sky and all, which is really,
Sorry,
really.
there is no power in the room. Power got
Yes.
off. It's
No,
raining
this is,
here, so I just came out and sat.
no, it looks lovely. So Arun, this is still, you know, it's an early part of your journey still as a filmmaker, and you have seen, you know, you're part of the new directors at the Lincoln Center Festival, I think later in the year, and that's that's really great. Like, how does that feel? Like, how is that something that you were anticipating, or um, you know, how does it feel?
So yeah, so being shown in places which are prestigious and all that is good. It's a good encouraging thing in your journey. But again, you come back to, I mean, coming back to a question of challenges. Initially, when I started out making films, or in my very formative years, I mean, I'm still in my formative years, but probably when I just started making films, I thought the actual challenge is to make the film in the sense in all ways, probably working with an actor and trying to understand like how do I shoot something, and how do I bring out the emotions and music, sound, and all of this. And I always thought this is going to be the challenge. And during my short films or after my first feature, in fact, that feeling kind of intensified. That like you have to really understand what editing means and what juxtaposition means, and how do you use sound and all of these things and all of that. And then you make another film, second film, and now I'm thinking like, okay, of course, it is still challenging to be able to talk about a character, to tell a story and all of that. But now it is actually frustrating for me to think that to come to terms with the fact that the system probably is a bigger challenge, because now uh, the system is posing a challenge to me that can I continue making films? Like I made a film, or I've probably made 2 films until now, which is until now not given a penny to back to the producer, and almost nothing to me actually. So how do I belong to a system which is not able to sustain itself now? And sometimes I find it very hard to comprehend with the fact that the whole of independent cinema is dependent on 2 monopolized private companies. I mean, that feels like a joke to me. I mean, that feels like, what is my position as a filmmaker, that I have to now either look for funds from Europe, from first world countries or second world countries, and like make applications and do films, or I do films in my own way with my own camera, yet there is nobody to buy, you know, the films, or there is nobody to like distribute the films and all. And what does this do to the mind of a filmmaker? Now, I am not a sage, you know, I am a person with all kinds of emotions. I need money to run my life. I have a family of my own, even though I try to live a very modest life. Now, I'm thinking about like, what is the position of an independent filmmaker? I mean, it is not. And going back to the earlier conversation about bankable stars, I don't believe there is any bankable star. Come on, I mean, nobody is bankable. I mean, I don't just believe in that. Of course, there are some known faces and of course, platforms and producers go for some known faces and all that. But the whole bankable notion doesn't exist for me, because I think it's a very flawed notion. Okay, because every bankable person has had unbankable times and all of that. So ideally there is none. So for me the bankable thing is the connection with an audience. You know, that is always bankable. The connection that a certain story or a certain image or a certain sound can do to someone, or what it did to you, that is always bankable. Now you are in a situation where you are not able to cash in on that bankable element, like I have to make a film, right, to be able to like bring out or to even challenge myself. The challenge exists when I make a film. Now, how do I make a film? I can make a film with my own camera with very limited means. Who's funding it? There is no private equity when you have made 2 films and none of the films have made the money back. Or there is probably, I mean, then it becomes an extremely dependent situation on having European producers, or even for that you need very strong Indian equity. And you have a system in India where you can't put up good strong Indian equity without selling something previously or without having some kind of, I mean, what you guys would call bankable or whatever. So the position of a filmmaker and the intentions of a filmmaker definitely is being squeezed by a larger perception of for example, Onir was talking about how the OTTs can squeeze you. But I like I mean, it's very sad that cinema, especially independent cinema, which is supposed to be, which is supposed to shoot all these systems, is actually more dependent on these systems, than even what would be called as a commercial film. So the challenges today for me, beyond making a film, are these aspects also. So I need to get to make the film, and that is actually more challenging now.
Vinodji, tell us a little bit about your journey. Has it been really challenging, or what's the reception that the film has gotten, and what are the future plans for it? What direction do you see it going in, and what are your hopes for it?
मेरे पास बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज था कि इस स्क्रिप्ट को लेके प्रोड्यूसर ढूंढना। मुझे पता है कि मैंने जो मेरी स्टोरी है कस्ती को 2 इंसिडेंट्स पे है, सच्ची हकीकत पे मैंने लिखी हुई है। तो मैंने पहले उस पे शॉर्ट फिल्म बनाई, उसको शॉर्ट फिल्म बना के मैंने बाकायदा फेस्टिवल में भेजकर मैंने प्रोड्यूसर को कन्विंस किया कि ये स्क्रिप्ट है और ये पोस्टमार्टम शॉर्ट फिल्म है जिसपे मैं फीचर बनाना चाहता हूँ। कस्टडी उसका एक्सटेंडेड वर्जन था जो पोस्टमार्टम शॉर्ट फिल्म मैंने बनाई थी। तो उसका अलग चैलेंज था प्रोड्यूसर ढूंढने का, उनको कन्विंस करने का एज ए प्रोड्यूसर। उसके बाद जब मैं ऑन फ्लो जाता शूट के लिए करता था, तो मुझे ऑन रियल लोकेशन पे शूट करना था, उसका एक अलग चैलेंज था। और रियल कैरेक्टर्स थे, उनको एक्टिंग नहीं आती थी, वो न्यू कमर्स थे, तो वो एक अलग चैलेंज था। उसके बाद जब फिल्म कंप्लीट हुई तो मार्केट प्लेस में उसको फेस्टिवल में भेजना या रिलीज का अभी बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है। हम ट्राई कर रहे हैं कि अभी थिएटर रिलीज का, लेकिन पता नहीं कब पॉसिबल होगा। अभी तो ऑनलाइन ओटीटी पे रिलीज हुई है फिल्म भी, आप देख सकते हैं। तो ये अपने एक बहुत स्ट्रगल था मेरे लिए 4 साल का।
आप फिर से बनाएंगे ऐसी पिक्चर कि अगली बार अलग से बनाएंगे?
बनाऊंगा, डेफिनेटली बनाऊंगा, लेकिन अभी तो मुझे थोड़ा सा इकोनॉमिकली स्टेबल होना पड़ेगा। उसके हिसाब से मैं अभी कुछ अलग ट्राई कर रहा हूँ, क्योंकि मुझे ऐसे और फिल्में बनानी है। सोच रहा हूँ मैं अगली फिल्म में खुद ही प्रोड्यूस करूँ, जिस तरह से मुझे बनानी है या बनाना चाहता हूँ। इसलिए मैं ट्राई कर रहा हूँ कि थोड़ा सा इकोनॉमिकल स्टेबिलिटी आएगी तो मैं शायद इससे भी अच्छी फिल्में बनाऊंगा।
Okay. Yes, Onir, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in like what Arun was, saying right now is, and that's what the 2 years thing that I was mentioning is that when as a producer director, it's also the investment that goes into, and when people are hounding you for their monies, then it's very difficult to enjoy that wait, because you're constantly being told by people what is happening, when is the film releasing, So it's a very different, of course, when it finally releases, half the joy is also gone because you are, trying to figure out that, oh my God, okay, this much, is returned and this much still you have to figure out, and that is what, like, I totally can understand what Arun said, because I remember when I was making My Brother Nikhil, the joy of making the film, nothing else mattered, even when I was doing I Am. But after that, you realize you're traveling the world with your film. You're doing this, but you're just all the time weighed by, okay, now also you've not recovered. And people don't believe you because they see you traveling the world. They think that, oh my God, he's making so much money, but not returning the investment. So people don't understand that, different, you're hosted by festivals and all. And what I've noticed recently, and this is, I think, I want to talk about it because I've been interacting with a lot of platforms, and this is how content is very often struck. It's one is, oh, we want younger stuff. We think for, young people, because that's the main audience. So don't you have something young? And then what is most disturbing is when you are sending a crew list, you know, uh, what alarms me and saddens me is the way it's becoming ageist. If you have slightly anybody above 45, 50 in terms of your crew, be it camera, be it sound, you're told that, oh, can't you think of someone younger, more edgy?
Hmm.
It saddens me and breaks my heart. And today it is a fact that a lot of older technicians don't have work. It's
Hmm.
being, I mean, I'm all for young people getting work. I'm always working with a lot of youngsters and newcomers, but that doesn't mean, you know, the
Hmm.
people who are for so many, I mean, and that is, I think, extremely worrisome that
Hmm.
how much this whole thing, notion of independent cinema, when everything is getting controlled by few forces.
Hmm. Rohina, you had a question?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I just just to respond to Onir, I find this idea of edgy very annoying because I don't even know who defines what is edgy, and the most
Edgy,
idiotic
yeah.
things are considered edgy. But um, no, I actually had a question because which is addressed to Arun and Onir and Vinod. Um, I don't know what you guys feel because I always thought until very recently that the audience is much smarter than distributors and producers,
Hmm.
who are the ones who take the call as to what the audience actually gets to see. um, and now it seems that so everyone thought the platform, these new platforms are the great equalizer and it's going to democratize everything, and so then films like ours will get more uh, attention, and but now we're sort of subject to the algorithm
Hmm.
deciding what happens and doesn't happen for us. And I think my question is really just like, is it really us, like us, I mean, as as people, is the audience really just not interested in what we have to say? Is it the distributor, the
Hmm.
producer, or the platform that's not giving us a fair shot? I mean, I'm not on Stir's not on a platform yet, so I don't know.
Hmm.
uh, it's not coming from experience, but I'm just
I
pretty
feel
nervous
that
about this whole thing.
Yeah. I feel that it's a mix of two things. One is I think we need to accept that, especially in a country like India, ours is a audience that is being nurtured and growing. Because also in terms of independent cinema, unless it is a certain masala, it does not become popular. So it's okay not to be. I mean, we don't. I mean, I feel it's okay if we don't have as many people, but it. I feel that, I mean, a film like Sir will find its audience, but the other thing that stops is when there's a film like Sir or My Brother Nikhil or I Am, which goes to the platform, there's a certain amount of investment that also platforms do in promoting what content is there,
Hmm.
So that does not happen as much,
Mm.
you know. And so, when there is a film coming from, I suppose, a Dharma production or whatever, even if it's a smaller budget film, suddenly you have the whole world tweeting about it, right? It'll be covered by every second platform. So immediately, even if it's to troll, people start watching it, apparently. Okay. So, I mean, that does not happen. So I feel that that is kind of, so it's a mix of both. And it's okay, yes. I mean, I think as a person, I've accepted that, okay, that's not the audience because this is a choice we have made for the kind of films we are
Right.
making. But I feel still we don't get that fair space yet, that, okay, at least unless you push something a little, which is new, which, the palette needs to be developed. So it needs an extra push. We don't get that extra push. It's actually neglected.
I guess people need
Hmm.
to know it exists, even, right? Sometimes on a
Hmm.
platform you
Hmm.
don't even know that. uh, you have to go search, I guess, which is which is much
No,
harder.
also I feel there is, everything is so commerce driven. Like again, like about Chauranga. I feel sad that a film like that, after the first 3 years of being in a platform, it does not have a home, you know. And there are people constantly messaging me that we want to see the film where I'm like, I have not found, because I've told very clearly, oh, this kind of a serious Dalit thing, there is no one interest. So everything is about, again, the what is perceived as, so it's not even given that chance. I mean, let people discover. I don't need as many viewers. It could just be there in the library, but even that is, unfortunately, so the desire is not there. See, the thing is, what is the goal? The goal is not that more people watch great cinema. The goal is that more and more people subscribe to watch, even to troll. I just find it, oh my God, they're celebrating that so many people trolled this film.
Hmm. Hmm. That does seem. Asim, did you have any questions?
This is a question that I've been, it's come up even now, really. A question I've been meaning to ask Onir for a very long time. Onir has been doing brilliant work, a lot of recognition in India, abroad. And you were talking about the struggles even now to raise funds. I think you mentioned that going to Canada for some funding or something like that. And then we have first-time filmmakers like Vinod or somebody. Well, Rohena is also practically, she's made a documentary before that. Onir, what keeps you going? How do you keep getting motivated? I understand, there is a creative person within you and you have things to say. And every time you've had an opportunity, you've really said something solid. But still, in the kind of marketplace that you were just talking about, what really keeps you going? I'm very curious. And hats off to you, Onir, that you've been able to, ride this wave.
I think that is closer to what I think Tillotama has been talking about. I feel that every time, like for example, the way I am happened is just because I had no idea about crowdfunding. There were no platforms in India at that time. No, uh, none. There was no crowdfunding platform, and I just thought that I really, really want to make this film, and so put up a Facebook post, and that's how people started. So I feel that the need to tell the stories is so much that I'm constantly trying to negotiate. Also, I'm quite shameless in terms of when it comes to asking people for money. So, I keep trying. Like recently, like I'm trying to make now, which will announce at iView. Uh, I think I can talk about it, no, Maina?
Yes, of course,
Yeah.
of course.
So I'm making a sequel to I Am, which is VR. So, and it will be celebrating Article 377. So, all four stories in the four same cities, but are LGBTQI stories, a gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual story. So I thought that okay, I am has some value, whatever. So I was reaching out to platforms that okay, I'm doing this film, all happy stories because I want to have empowering LGBTQI stories, young stories, the whatever. And after a point, like all the conversation, suddenly the reply stops. The minute I say gay, transgender, lesbian, bisexual, suddenly no reply, no reply. And that's when now, like I was mentioning, I'm tying up with the Canadian co-production, but it does not make me happy. I mean, I'm ultimately happy that okay, I will make my film, but it is tiring. I think Maina, I was telling her only that I can't again crowdfund. To have 400 people messaging you and writing to you, when do I get my money back, is a nightmare.
Oh.
But you should have promised them a DVD of I Am, and they should be happy.
But
Signed by you.
imagine the cost of 400 DVDs.
I know.
Proper DVDs and couriering them. I'll be like, I could make another film.
I know. But can I just ask
Sure.
विनोद जी, जब आपने स्क्रिप्ट लिखी थी कस्तूरी की, और आपने कहा कि आपने अपनी पर्सनल कहानी पे लेकर लिखी थी, तो जब पैसा रेज करने गए आपने फंडिंग के लिए, तो लोगों ने कैसे रिएक्ट किया इस बात पर? मतलब बहुत डिफिकल्ट सब्जेक्ट मैटर है, इट्स अ वेरी मूविंग स्टोरी, और आपने बहुत, यू मेड अ ब्यूटीफुल वेरी हार्ड हिटिंग फिल्म, लेकिन यू नो जो नॉर्मल प्रोड्यूसर्स होते हैं जिनको अपने पैसे वापस चाहिए होते हैं, तो उनका इमीडिएटली रिएक्शन होगा कि अरे ये तो एक बच्चे की कहानी है जो टॉयलेट साफ करता है या यू नो मॉरेटोरियम में डेड बॉडीज को साफ करता है। तो लोगों ने रिएक्ट कैसे किया जब आप पैसे रेज करने गए?
जैसे आपने कहा कि मुझे लिखता था, तो मेरे दोस्तों ने मुझे कहा कि ये मत लिख, ये वर्क नहीं करेगी, ये इसे कोई प्रोड्यूसर नहीं मिलेगा, स्टॉप कर राइटिंग और उसका कुछ कॉमेडी लिख, रोमांटिक लव स्टोरी लिख। तो मेरे दोस्तों ने मुझे डिमोटिवेट किया था पहले कि ये मत लिख, ये वर्क नहीं होगा, ये किसी को पसंद नहीं आएगा। लेकिन मुझे सेल्फ बिलीव था कि अगर मैं उसमें ऑनेस्टी से लिखूंगा तो कोई ना कोई होगा जो इसको आके लेके जाएगा। तो उसके साथ मैंने लिखना स्टार्ट किया। और जैसे मैंने पहले कहा कि मैंने एक उस पर ही शॉर्ट फिल्म बनाई थी, पोस्टमार्टम। तो वो पोस्टमार्टम शॉर्ट फिल्म और स्क्रिप्ट मैंने दोनों प्रोड्यूसर को प्रेजेंट की, और उनको पता दिखा कि उनको कि ये बना सकता है, ये कर सकता है, उतना इसका पोटेंशियल है उसमें, वो कंटेंट में भी है, उसने करके दिखाया भी है। पोस्टमार्टम शॉर्ट फिल्म के जो बनाई थी वो कांस में गई थी, शॉर्ट फिल्म कॉर्नर में, पोलैंड में उसका सिलेक्शन हुआ था, उसको नॉमिनेशन मिला था एडिटिंग का पोलैंड में। तो मुझे उससे कॉन्फिडेंस आता गया कि जो मैंने सब्जेक्ट जो सिलेक्ट किया है वो लोगों को शायद 10 साल पहले पसंद नहीं आता था, लेकिन शायद हो भी नहीं पाया था। लेकिन अभी ऐसा माहौल है, जैसे आपने आपके फिल्म में पेंट्री का स्क्रीनिंग हुआ था, सिलेक्शन हुआ था, उसके बाद सैराट का हुआ था। तो मुझे लोगों की पता लगता था कि लोगों को देखने में ये पता नहीं, लेकिन 10 लाख लोग नहीं है, लेकिन 1 लाख तो लोग हैं जो उसको पसंद करेंगे देखने के लिए। तो उनके लिए जाने की कोशिश मैंने की, खुद को उनके सामने पहले तो खुद रखने तो दो, उसके बाद लेट्स सी कि लोग क्या रिएक्ट करते हैं। इसका मतलब नहीं है कि हमें ऐसी फिल्म नहीं बनानी चाहिए, लोग नहीं देखेंगे तो हमें बनाते रहना चाहिए। जैसे मैडम ने कहा कि मैडम ने कि चेंज धीरे धीरे आता है, एकदम से नहीं आता है। सो मुझे लगता है कि हमें ये बनाते रहना चाहिए। ऐसे लोग अभी बढ़ रहे हैं जो ऐसे कंटेंट को सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, फेसबुक या ट्वीट हो या करके लोगों को इनवाइट करे फिल्म देखने को, सजेस्ट करे एक दूसरे को। तो मुझे लगता है कि पॉजिटिव वाइब्स है जो मुझे कॉन्फिडेंस देते हैं कि ऐसे फिल्में बनाते रहनी चाहिए।
Definitely, आपको बिल्कुल बनाते रहना चाहिए. And you know, someone once came to my festival and said, you know, that art, and we were talking about art and activism, and they said that, you know, art, it's not that you see immediate change, but there is, you know, art develops an aesthetic muscle over time. And you know, and the work, like I said before, all the work that all of you have been doing is adding more and more to a larger repository or like an archive that's in the making. And it's very important, you are pushing these narratives from the marginal, you're sort of putting them center stage. And there is an audience. I definitely believe that there is an audience. I think you know, I wanted to also say it's really brave, Rohena, to release the film during COVID times.
Yes.
And I've been speaking to Shiladitya, who's the distributor, and he tells me that you know, it's so surprising that people are coming. It's the third week, right? It's the third week or maybe the fourth week. So congratulations to all of you for it obviously tells the story that people are wanting to see films like this. I know that there were other films that were released at the same time during COVID and it did not find an audience. And your film is still in the theaters and people are keen and looking forward to it. And we're getting press that wants to see the film. So congratulations. I think, you know,
Thank you.
Congratulations to all of you for telling these
Thank you so
stories
much.
also. Okay.
Thank you so much, Rohena.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.